I feel raped. That's how I feel. Raped, frightened, and sad.
And what exactly were they looking for?
All his medical records, his pictures, anything they could find. We must have been here for 25 or 30 minutes. We created a lot of chaos.
Well, creating a lot of chaos kind of comes along with the president, but the guy you just saw there is the president's former personal physician, Dr. Harold Bornstein. He says 3 men, including Trump bodyguard, they raided his office and they confiscated medical records. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders didn't deny it. She said this is just business as usual. Take a listen.
It would be a standard procedure. Those records were being transferred over to the White House Medical Unit as requested.
Not exactly 3 guys moving patients out of the way, going in there, and even making them take a picture of him with Trump down from the wall, okay? Anyway, Bornstein says that Trump cut ties with him after the doctor told the New York Times that Trump takes Propecia for hair growth. The doctor also says the president dictated the letter he wrote, giving Trump a glowing report on his health. You may remember this from the campaign here. This wasn't actually a laughing matter at the time. But the president had a chuckle about it when he was on Jimmy Kimmel during the campaign, joking about the very subject. Now, Kimmel starts out by reading the letter the doctor we just saw you, who said he was raped, wrote for him.
His physical strength and stamina are extraordinary. If elected, Mr. Trump, I can state unequivocally, will be the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency.
Whoa. I love that.
How do you get a doctor?
Good.
How do you get a doctor to write
in all fairness, I said, Doc, I want to tell you, I'll be the healthiest president ever. And he said, oh, I think I agree. And I think he probably took my words and he put them down.
Yeah, well, the good doctor here, just the latest person in the Trump orbit who has been kicked to the curb when things don't get so good. His personal attorney, Michael Cohen, many believe could be the next to join this very long list. Cohen's office and home, as well as hotels he was staying on, were all raided by the FBI last month. Now many consider him as big a threat to Trump as the Russia probe itself. Now, this right on the heels of the raid. The National Enquirer published a hit piece on Cohen called Trump's Fixers, Secrets and Lies. Cohen, of course, arranged the $130,000 payoff to porn star Stormy Daniels. Now, I want to remind you of something. This isn't just an aside when I mention the Enquirer. Trump, a longtime friend of David Pecker, that's the CEO of the Enquirer's parent company. They have bought stories for Trump to make sure they never make air, killed stories that people have come to him, and wrote stories that have hurt the opponents, political opponents of Donald Trump, as well as business rivals over the years. The two have a very long relationship, and it is not coincidental that now they have turned on one Mr. Cohen. Now, the company reportedly paid former Playboy model Karen McDougal $150,000. This is the Enquirer, for exclusive rights to a story alleging a 9-month affair with Trump. And then they never published it. Enquirer's parent company also reportedly paid a Manhattan doorman $30,000 for a story about Trump allegedly fathering a love child. That story also shockingly never made it to print. A lot of dots to connect here. Let's bring in our legal panel. Jim Kasuris, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, sitting on the board of directors of both the New York City Criminal Bar Association, and he also lectures frequently at New York Law and the bar associations in Queens and New York City. Doug Van Oist, rejoining us. Good of him to spend some quality time with us. Founding partner of Carson Van Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct. I kid because I care. He was also selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country. And Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLC, and he also former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. All right, guys, thank you. Now, my question is just, I guess this is politics as much as it's, I guess, taking away any credibility. Why, Jimmy, would they go to discredit Cohen and the president in his Fox and Friends phone call making sure that he hurt Cohen the day that Cohen was going to go to court, saying, he's not really my attorney. He does very small amount of stuff here when Cohen was trying to prove he was attorney to maintain attorney-client privilege. But, oh, by the way, yeah, he did do the Stormy Daniels thing. If he had to thread the needle to both screw over Cohen as well as himself, he managed to do it in a single phone call. Now he does this hit piece. he's basically telling Cohen, you better flip here because I'm going to turn on you like a bad dime.
Well, I don't know if you can turn on Cohen with a piece from the National Enquirer, which is not necessarily the bastion of truth.
But Trump has used it, as I gave evidence here,
absolutely.
for decades.
All I'm saying is that's not a way you're going to turn on him. It is a horrendous idea. It is an utterly horrendous idea. If the man can hurt the president, this is the way to invite him to hurt the president. And it's just, I don't get it.
Isn't that part of the problem, Doug? Even though the president has the power of the pardon, you know, there's that expression, everything he touches dies or whatever, but in this particular case, the laundry list of people that were either with a campaign that he cut loose when things got rough, certainly people in his business life before that, now all of a sudden with the probe, even cabinet members that, you know, he'd cut out and by the way, on the way out the door, embarrass you or make sure you lose your pension literally the day before. My point is, there's enough of a thread here that if you're Cohen, and I know he said he'd take a bullet for the president, right now after seeing all the folks that have already flipped, why wouldn't he join their ranks if the deal is even on the table right now?
Well, I think he will join the ranks. I think the issue with the president distancing himself is he knows it's inevitable that the guy will actually flip on him, will have things to say. So he wants the ability to say, listen, he didn't really know me that well, he didn't do a lot for me, he's making this all up. That's really what he's doing.
And I was just stunned by it, Mayo. Again, the politics as much as the law. And if you're Cohen's attorney right now, you saying to him, longer you wait, the more you're going to be discredited and the more you're going to be put in the box. Every single day since Cohen's offices have been raided and even before, the president has done him fewer and fewer favors. And God forbid there's some under-the-table agreement for a pardon or whatever else. Right as we're talking about the Mueller probe ramping up, it gets from bad to worse, and Cohen could be looking at a lot of trouble right now.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Cohen's already in conversations with the government, and what was striking to me was that after his office was raided, not unlike Trump's personal doctor's offices were raided by Trump's own people, he had very favorable things to say about the people who raided his office. In fact, he characterized it as anything other than a raid. He said they were very polite and courteous, and they came in very professional. Nobody I know says that after they've had a search warrant executed at their home or premises of business. So he could already have sat down and given them everything he knows and be in a position to have a very favorable deal.
And wouldn't it be funny if at the end of all this, the thing that sunk the president, it wasn't about obstruction, it wasn't about collusion, it was about the Stormy Daniels payoff here, and then the dots potentially that could be connected that unfold out of that with all the basically material work that they come across in the course of raiding these things. Okay, I want to pivot now to the question of Trump as a client, because we got some news today that Trump brought in a hitter, okay? And as I mentioned off the top, Ty Cobb's out, now all of a sudden you got a real person. What would concern you most? And you and I talked off camera about a totally unrelated story about a client that you found challenging because you couldn't help him because he wasn't telling you everything. Mm-hmm. Let's start with that, because to me, anybody going in, you have to know that Trump hasn't told you the whole story. As an attorney, do you want to know everything because of potentially exposure it could mean for you? Or do you want to be kept in the dark on some things, but my God, look what you could be shocked at when you come in for a sit down with Mueller or whatever else. How much in this particular case do you want to know if you're representing Trump?
You know, Rich, there are two schools of thought. There are some lawyers who say, I don't want to know. And quite frankly, I don't really understand how you can effectively represent somebody in these circumstances if you don't want to know. We know what the target areas are, but we also know that there may be several other areas that we don't know about. Now, the president is going to have the benefit of having the questions. His lawyers are negotiating what the scope of any interview would be.
But we also know the question or the subject is the first foray, not the last. So if he asked about the meeting at the Trump Towers, for example, I would want to know as an attorney, wouldn't you, Jimmy? What did you know, President? Did you know there were meetings 6 floors before you? Did you direct anyone to go there? It's going to come up. Do you want him to tell you the truth?
Rich, questions beget answers, answers beget more questions. Yes. Yes, there's no way to counsel a client as to whether or not to go in and speak to prosecutors who consider him a potential target or at least a subject unless you know what the truthful answers are going to be.
Doug, the next thing that people say that make him a nightmare client is they didn't tell the truth. And there's one thing with tweeting about who knows what, from crowd sizes to hand size or whatever in between. But there's another thing when you sit down and you actually have, you're sitting there and you're under oath. How petrified would you be if you have a client who has 71 years of a pattern of time of lying, exaggerating, and volunteering more information than you ever want him to? Is that an impossible client to coach?
Well, first off, we don't coach our clients. It's not. We wouldn't be petrified. As lawyers, we have. We can't sit there when somebody's actually not telling the truth under oath. We're not allowed to do that. If you have a client that is perjuring themselves and you know it, you have certain obligations as a member of the bar. So you have to know, you have to be confident.
That also presumes that you know he's lying, which is what I would assume would scare the bejesus out of you.
Well, that goes back to what you were talking to Jimmy about. You do have to know everything that the person is going to say. You should know, and you should know that it's not blatantly a lie. Because if you're doing that, if you're walking him in, he's just lying, you have certain obligations as an attorney. You can't let that happen.
And then finally, Mayo, I think what would also scare me is that A, he wouldn't listen to your advice when you go in there, and also B, not knowing what the guy on the other side of the table knows. I mean, for example, Manafort tried to have his case thrown out. And apparently, the thoroughness of the rebuttal from the Mueller team in why the case should not be dismissed, the judge turned and said, you got it? Do you have anything? I mean, he basically destroyed every argument you have. As I said to Dan, the voluminous evidence that they've gathered and not leaked anything about would scare me to high heaven if I was representing the president.
Well, when you're talking about the United States government, I mean, I think even one of the Russian ambassadors made comment about it not that long ago, that we spend more money on intelligence than probably England, France, Germany, and Russia combined. So when you want to wonder what the person across the table from you knows, it's everything. So you can assume that they know things that even you've forgotten about. They have a virtually limitless budget. They have experts top in their field. And so I don't see how you can represent someone in Donald Trump's position without knowing everything, because in order for you to formulate strategy, you need to know what the weaknesses are in your case.
And the problem is, how forthcoming is he going to be? And finally, the funny part is, he's waited too long. If Trump sat down before the Cohen offices were raided, before any of the revelations in the last 2 months, it would have limited some of the scope of what has now become fair game, in effect, to ask him about. And they would have had a stronger hand to play. Now, I don't know about you guys, I wouldn't counsel him to sit down. He's going to make a bad situation worse.
But you antagonize the other side like Bill Cosby's attorney did, and you start to go after the judge and the prosecutor. Here you're going after the FBI, and you start to criticize everybody in the Justice Department, so you're not making friends.
You wouldn't have counseled him to go in back then. So because you'd be worried about fewer topics, but you'd be equally worried that you just have no idea what he's going to say, and every question is a trap.
And remember, 4 witnesses have already become cooperating witnesses, I should say, and we don't know what they've already spilled the beans on. Mueller does, but obviously the attorneys and the new attorneys for Trump don't know. And again, that falls on that long list of be afraid to be very
Flynn's
afraid.
sentence was adjourned 90 days and then another 60 days. And just for the viewers, in a federal case, when you're a cooperator, you normally don't get sentenced until the targets of your cooperation are dealt with.
Interesting. And also a little scary if you're the president. All right, coming up next, disturbing story coming out of Mamaroneck in Westchester County. A toddler dead, the mother facing charges, the father pointing fingers. We're going to take a closer look straight ahead.